Hello, and welcome to Alienate UK with your hosts, Andy and Nicole. Please put all questions in caps and start with an emoji. Super Chat and Super Stickers are now active.
Let's go.
Hello, welcome to today's edition of Alienate UK, where I'm joined by, just in time, by milliseconds, the wonderful Nicole, and our amazing guest, who has been with us before, Mr. Paul Bartholomew. So thank you and welcome to the show, Paul. For those who don't know anything about him, I'll do a quick introduction. So Paul has studied UFOlogy, Cryptozoology and Parapsychology for over 5 decades. He's a co-author of Bigfoot Encounters in New York and New England, 2008, and co-author of The Mysterious Northwoods from 2020. So welcome, Paul, and thank you again so much for coming in.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's awesome. So, what can you? Because I was reading your bio this afternoon, and I didn't ask you the last time you was on. Can you tell us a little bit about the Northwoods, what it is, and what goes on there?
Sure. I grew up in Whitehall, New York, which was formerly called Skeensboro. It's a very historic town. And so we're in the Northeast of upstate New York. And that's what we met by the Northwoods. And basically what we concentrate on or specialize in is the Adirondack Mountains of New York and the Green Mountains of Vermont. And of course, this whole region in the Northeast is very historic. And if you were to take my home state, and just look at the surrounding areas, you have sort of a microcosm of the whole world in the sense that we have major waterways with the Great Lakes and the Atlantic Ocean. We have major cities like New York City, huge cities, Albany and so forth. And we also have tremendous amount of rural areas, which are very desolate. So this is sort of a microcosm of the world, and it's a great place to study these paranormal phenomena.
Yeah.
I like New York. It's a pretty good state.
Yeah, I agree. Whereabouts are you?
I'm in Orange County, so I think we figured out I'm out like 2 hours down from you.
Okay, yeah. Well, if you remember Whitley Strieber with the Communion book and the Transformation and Confirmation, all those different books that he did, his experiences started in a cabin in upstate New York in the Kingston Accord area. So he's got a direct connection to this, New York State.
Yep.
I've got Pine Bush and the UFOs.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I've got 2 of his books, Transformation and Communion. I still need to open them, read them. I do know a lot about them because there's been a lot of public talk about them and on YouTube channels and TV shows and what have you. I just need to open it and read the details of everything that's gone on with him. So It will happen one day, probably on a 7-hour flight over to New York.
Right? Communion is a very good book.
Yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it very detailed and very personal. And
Yeah.
he had those personal experiences in that cabin, and other people had similar experiences there as well. So that's, direct New York connection. And Whitley's one of those deep thinkers. And, you have these various people throughout ufology and cryptozoology, like Jacques Vallée. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's just they approach this on a different level, and every once in a while, Jacques Vallée is not afraid to shake it up, and we look at it from a whole different perspective.
Yeah.
Hmm. Sorry, I was just reading the chat. I thought there's a question up, but there's not.
Yeah.
That's right. So do you still go out now investigate? I know you said we was talking off air before, and you said you've been out to a few different locations. Do you still go out now? How often do you go out, and how often do you go to the same location without giving too much away of exactly where you go?
Yeah, we go to different locations. Growing up in Whitehall, there's several places that I'll check out occasionally. Sometimes it's as simple as driving the roads at night. Sometimes
Yep.
it's walking into the fields and looking for tracks, things like that. I like to, when there's an actual sighting, that's when you can really get to a location and try to document, look for tracks and look for evidences and branches that are broke, things like that, that might indicate that something had passed through there. But yeah, it's a matter of, all we do is document, and we let the chips fall where they may. And my biggest advice for younger researchers is, don't allow this to become a religion, and just report it as it's reported, as it happens. And the closer you get to the time that something happens and get all those details down, the better, because in time, memories fade and details are lost. And I think we've documented it pretty well in this region, from the Algonquin and the Iroquois to the Abenaki, and stories of stone giants and giant men of the mountains, Wendigos. And it seems to be a very rich history with the Bigfoot phenomena. But we also investigate other phenomena as well, be they UFO or UAP phenomena. We've done that for years. Probably did that before the Bigfoot research. Poltergeist phenomena, hauntings. So it's the full gambit. And the more you investigate, the more you kind of see the common denominators between the phenomena. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if these are manifestations from the same source phenomena. And it would appear that when you have an outbreak, let's say we give an example of what happened in Whitehall in 1976. We had a major outbreak that became a landmark case of a Bigfoot sighting by multiple witnesses, perhaps as many as a dozen. And they saw it over a period of about a week. So this was August of 76 right through to September 1st. Now, at first look, you would say, well, okay, so there's a Bigfoot sighting and so forth. But when we started researching it, we found out it was during a massive UFO flap that extended all the way to Rockland County. And actually, there were the nuclear plant down there was on alert because of the sightings. And there were massive number of sightings in this region at the same time. So you start to see these different layers start to emerge. And we had the, what you might call the pterodon or the Thunderbird report as well that same week. So what initially started as a Bigfoot outbreak in August of 76 ended up being a full paranormal outbreak. And so I've seen that pattern emerge and repeat many times over the years.
Yeah. So what? Yeah, but when you're saying about manifestation, because this is one of my favorite topics or rabbit holes to go down. You said about it's a phenomena that's manifesting it. So do you think then that the phenomena is reading what we're thinking. Let me rephrase it. The phenomena is taking our thoughts and then creating these things for us rather than us subconsciously manifesting it.
That's an interesting theory. And I know with crop circle research years ago, that appeared to be happening, where they were almost influencing the crop circles, and it became this whole phenomena. John Keel talked about the manifestations of different phenomena. He noted that. Brad Steiger noted it years ago. That's back in the 60s. So it's taken me, a half century to catch up where they were at. But they were real pioneers with this, because they wrote about it when no one was talking about it. But, I was very fortunate as I grew up, because I met a lot of different researchers, be they, from around the world. And the one that I met back in, I think it was 1978, was Dr. Hynek, who had given a presentation at in New Hampshire. And my parents had brought me there, so I got to meet Dr. Hynek. Bob Bletchman and Larry Fawcett introduced me. But I got to see what Hynek was talking about. And this was, this was probably, 8 years or so before he had passed on. And Dr. Hynek wasn't talking about, other civilizations. I mean, that was a topic that came up and things like that, extraterrestrials and things. He was talking about parallel realities. And that was his phrase. He talked about how so many of the religions over the years had discussed other planes of existence. And that's where he was actually heading towards the end of his investigations. And of course, you got to remember, Hynek is such a great story, because here is an astronomer who was hired by the Air Force to debunk and explain and expose the UFO phenomena as being natural phenomena and things like that, and hoaxes. And by the mid 1960s, in 1964, that Socorro, New Mexico case with Lonnie Zamora, he saw a police officer saw a downed craft, and it eventually took off. And as it turns out, Ray Stanford wrote a book, Socorro Saucer in a Pentagon Pantry, documenting other people who saw the object as well. And that was a turning point for Dr. Hynek, that he just couldn't explain these things away, and that these are credible people, highly credible people, and that they were seeing something extraordinary. So we got to see Hynek transform from the leading skeptic for the Air Force to the leading proponent of UFO research in the 1970s.
Yeah, because I've spoke with his son Paul. He came on with Earl Grey a couple of years back, and he was saying about the work that his dad did, and his brother, is it Josh? I'm sure his brother's called Josh Hynek, Paul's brother, and he was saying like what they used to do and all that kind of stuff, but he didn't really go into great detail about it. And I would have loved to have been able to speak to the dad and find out whatever was going on. I know obviously he's not going to be able to tell everything, but there must be some path that he could go down and give a good explanation for everything. But it's just, it's some of the people that are out there like yourself, but they're limited to what information that can get given, because when you get information or you get an account and how far you can go with it, because you've got the invisible line, aren't you? You know whether or not you can cross that or not. And do you ever feel like with some of the stuff, like the evidence that you get, that you just push a little bit over just to see what happens?
Well, I went to school at Castleton College in Vermont, and I studied under Dr. Warren Cook, who was one of the premier anthropologists who actually studied Bigfoot at the time that Grover Krantz and there were only a couple that were actually putting their reputations online. And Dr. Cook was asked one time, does studying this phenomena, discredit you? And he says, I've got tenure. So that was his suggestion. get your degree, get your doctorate, and then go into these topics when you can't be, because other people have had trouble when they've tried to continue with these investigations, like Jeff Meldrum had some difficulties.
Yes.
And if we go into the UFO field, Dr. David Jacobs had some difficulties. But these are all, David Jacobs wrote probably one of the premier books on the UFO phenomena with the UFO controversy in America. And so, I mean, these are really academic people. And one of the things Dr. Cook taught me was, he says, don't be afraid to push over the lines, but report it as accurately as possible. In other words, don't go into an investigation thinking this is going to happen, that's going to happen. Get it as it happens. And, if it seems unusual, that's fine. And I'll give you an example. Back in 1975, there was a sighting on the golf course here in Whitehall, the Skeene Valley Country Club. And it was owned by Clifford Sparks. And Cliff went out at 11 o'clock with his dog. And he goes out to green number 1. It was 11:30 or so. And he's on one of these little golf carts. And his dog, which usually jumps off and runs around, is rambunctious. They see this creature standing on green number 1. 7-foot tall creature, your typical Bigfoot type creature. He said it moves sloth-like, but he got a very good look at this. He saw the creature focus on the dog and not him. So he's watching this unusual vision that the creature had. And he described it as saying it was almost like short dots, almost like laser coming out of the eyes. And I asked him specifically, is that eye shine? That, that phenomenon where you hit a cat's eyes or a raccoon's eyes and stuff. And he said, absolutely not. It was something totally different. He said it was like short dots coming out like a laser. And he said dots were focused on the dog. And the dog that usually jumps around, is rambunctious, just subdued over the side of the cart. So Cliff got this very unique close view of the vision of the creature that I think a lot of people have never gotten. And the creature was focused on the dog, not him. So that's a unique view. And I know certain people had just but intentionally dismissed that characteristic of the red eyes, the laser type eyes. But I think those are the types of things that need to be documented, and that may actually give us a glimpse into another reality there.
Yeah. Because it's like, that sounds like, again, it goes to frequencies. So even though it was like just green dots coming out, I under the fear, I can't speak tonight, like the mindset that each of these colors are what honestly I can't talk. Whatever's going on must have some sort of frequency for it to affect another living creature. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, what appears to be happening is that we get both physical and non-physical realities to some of these sightings. And, it's great to document the footprints. I've got several castings here. Different footprints that have been documented. But, we also get the reports like down in Kinderhook, where Bruce Hallenbeck is been researching this for, another half century or so. Bruce has found tracks that end in the middle of a field. And that is really perplexing. But it doesn't take away from the track. And, it just all is, step, gone. And there's nothing else there. And so you wonder what happens there. And then, of course, you can get into, into all sorts of possibilities. You get into the, the Dave Paulides research with strange disappearances. And there seems to be a whole smorgasbord of paranormal phenomena. And when you start researching it, you see these common denominators. And there are some different aspects to the Bigfoot phenomena that I never thought, 50 years ago, I never thought I'd be here at the point that I'm at, but I allowed the phenomena to guide me here by researching and trying to stay as accurately as possible.
Yeah.
And no, when with these like little eye things, it's almost like it was scanning it, like a scanner at the store.
Well, I know
Yeah.
what Cliff said was, I said to him, he said, first of all, that he was frightened. And of course, Cliff was a big guy and he never went out again at night. That was the last time. And he had said that the hairs on his neck stood up as he was watching it because he was so scared. But he said the dog seemed paralyzed. And I remember he said specifically, he said, well, I was fine though. I could move and things because it wasn't looking at me. And I thought that was a very interesting statement that Cliff had made. And of course, this Cliff sighting took place a year before the Abear Road incident in 1976. So as time went on, we got some more really credible sightings. So these became landmark cases for the Whitehall area. But, in 1982, Dan Gordon, who was a neighbor of mine and a Whitehall policeman, he was on patrol with his partner. And at 4:30 in the morning, they would drive out by South Bay, which is as you head north out of town, turn around and then come back. And that's if you're heading towards Ticonderoga, you'll go that way, turn around and come back. That was part of their routine patrol. And they saw a creature, probably the most common Bigfoot sighting at 4:30 in the morning is the creature crosses the road in front of your car. And well, they were stunned because this creature, which was described as being about 7 feet tall, kind of thin, it was February of 1982. He was able to cross the road in 3 steps. And this was the main, this was Route 22. And so both officers saw the creature. One officer stayed inside the car. Dan pulled over, got out of the car, drew his weapon, and tried to pursue, but the creature was long gone into a rugged, rocky, wooded area. So he never, but Dan for 22 years couldn't talk about this because he didn't want to be known as the Bigfoot cop. And we had very strict protocols when we interviewed him. Both of those officers brought me to the site, explained what happened, but I couldn't use a recorder. I couldn't use a notepad. Everything was very strict because they did not want this stigma attached to them. And I think back in the 70s and 80s, that was the case. This was a negative for most of the people involved. Yeah. Now, this is sort of transformed in these modern times in that many people have found this to be a positive experience, their sightings. So I think that's a positive direction we're going in. And now we get, and now if we go into away from cryptozoology, we go into the UFO phenomena, UAP phenomena, we're talking about congressional hearings now. And that was unheard of since 2017, when that New York Times article broke, front page stuff, the landscape of the UFO phenomena, and that has, connections to other phenomena, has changed completely. And the way that the government has reported it, even though there's pushback at times, there certainly has been a lot of the congressional hearings and things that I think caught a lot of people off guard. And, the footage of the fast walker and the various naval films and things, we're in a different landscape now than we were in 2017. And I think we just keep pushing. And, it's the work of mainstream journalists like George Knapp, who a Peabody Award winner, just a terrific journalist and researcher and anchor. And what he's done to promote the UFO phenomena and push the boundaries is sensational. Yeah.
Because one of the last books I actually read was Skinwalkers of the Pentagon by George Knapp.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, I don't think it was what I was expecting, but he goes into great detail of what actually goes on in the Pentagon. So
yeah, he had written The Hunt for the Skinwalker with, I think it was Com Kelleher.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've got that one as well, but I've not read that yet.
Yeah, excellent.
I'm expecting the Pentagon to be staffed by a bunch of aliens and skinwalkers.
Yeah. That's kind of
walk into the office and unwrap the meat suit.
But I was kind of I wasn't expecting that, but I thought he was going to go into it that these like ETs that work there that have that are hidden from everyday people.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not. It's more of what goes on behind closed doors, like with the budgeting, the money, the where everything goes and how it works and all that kind of stuff. So it's more that kind of detail, like the different agencies that are employed that are not on the records and or don't exist.
That's kind of what's coming out now a little bit with Elon digging into things where all the money's going.
But if you've not already, just read the book, Skinwalkers of the Pentagon. It's really good.
It shows. I think what it shows is that the Pentagon had an interest in the ranch, and so it's being exposed. I think it sort of is showing that it understands and recognizes the connections between the various phenomena.
Yeah. Thank you. We have got a couple of questions. So the first, well, they're both from nickname. Do you want to do this, Nicole?
Yeah.
There you go.
Nickname as asking, what phenomena is the most dominant / prominent in all of Paul's research, and what are his examples and theories as to why? Thank you.
Interesting. When I first started this type of research, I was a young boy, and the thing that jumps out at me was I always had an interest in these types of phenomena, all the different phenomena, but the UFO phenomena jumped out at me in the 1973 flap. And that was reported by mainstream media as well as, your tabloid presses and things. But the 1973 was a special time for me because in October, you had the Calvin Parker and Charles Hickson case, the abduction case in Pascagoula, Mississippi. You had the Coyne helicopter, the near collision in Ohio between a helicopter and some sort of object. And right up here in the Northeast in December, those were in October, but in December of 73, we had a landing case that took place, and it was at the La Cabana restaurant. And I've actually got a picture of that. And something landed.
Yes.
And there are two concentric circles. And that is actually the owner, Jack Bergeron, pointing to the circles. And what had happened is that this is, at the sort of the tail end of a major flap. And there were sightings still going on that evening. But I remember like it was yesterday. And something had landed there and threw dirt against the door. There was enough dirt thrown against the door that he had to get a shovel to get into this restaurant. And so when he went in, the hot water taps ran cold and the cold water taps ran hot for about a 3-week period.
Wow.
It's actually been no explanation, but it takes it out of that weird hoax category. Plus, the whole hoax idea here doesn't make any sense. Whatever happened here was a physical phenomenon that happened to the soil, and the soil actually affected a ways down. So, that was one of those cases that became a landmark landing case right in the Glen Lake area, which is only about a half an hour from where I grew up. I grew up on a farm. And so I can remember we would watch we would get the morning paper, which was the Post-Star. And there was that famous picture. It was on the front page of the Post-Star. And that stuck with me, and it stuck with me. And I've got the picture hanging in my library here.
Wow.
So, that was a big case. There was something about 1973 there was a lot of credible sightings. And I think that launched me. And then in 76, we had the Bigfoot outbreak right in my own hometown here. And of course, back then, I always thought of the Bigfoot phenomena as being in the Pacific Northwest, Washington State, Oregon, California, up into British Columbia, Canada and stuff. That seemed to be, but the reality is that we had this rich history here with the, tracing back to the Native American times, Algonquin, Iroquois and stuff. And so the Wendigo reports and Samuel Champlain talked about I think it was Gugu was the pronunciation of the creature that the Native Americans talked about. So he wrote it in his journal. So now when we started researching the book in the late 80s and early 90s, that was the recognition that this phenomena was right here. And I was able to study with Dr. Cook at Castleton, and we were able to set up a database of sightings. And so in the Northeast, where there were very few reports, I think John Green's book, Sasquatch, the Apes Among Us, had carried like 11 reports in New York State or something like that. We were able to get hundreds of reports. So I think if you take any particular area, you can probably put it under a magnifying glass and turn up scores of sightings that are part of this hidden history.
Yeah. So with that landing outside the restaurant, did anyone go into that circle, and was anyone affected that you know of?
Back then, there was the National Investigation Committee on Aerial Phenomena, and they came to investigate. And there were various researchers. There was a lawyer up in Thai that had investigated. They had worked for this group, and they had, I believe, there were Air Force people that actually came and looked at it. And this became a huge case. I don't think it's ever been adequately resolved. And the effect of the water taps changing, I've never heard that with another case. So it's a red flag that all the characteristics seem to be there, that this is a legitimate case and one that has some far-reaching implications. I'm still waiting for an explanation on the taps. And
I'm assuming they had plumbers come out and everything and look into that.
I don't know if they actually had somebody look at it, but they just couldn't explain what had happened. And there was a theory that was put forward that perhaps they had a magnetic valve that would switch the different taps, and that had been subjected to an electromagnetic field that had changed that polarity for a while, and then it changed back to normal. And I mean, that's a theory. I don't know. It's just one of those great cases. Mm-hmm. And it's one that has stayed unexplained now for over 50 years. Now, that if you examine it from a rational point of view, you say, okay, maybe something landed. Did the government have a craft that landed there and then took off? Because there were people that heard a mechanical sound that night, and they knew something had been going on there. And yet when you go there, you see that this is the worst place ever that anything could possibly land. There's trees overcast, probably disaster if like it landed. Plus these two concentric circles the soil was affected. And so it's become one of those really perplexing cases. And, after 50 years, if this was a government project that, they would have no reason to keep anything secret after 50 years. Yeah. So you could say, hey, we had a experimental craft and we landed there. There's been none of that.
No. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense that they would land there out of all places if it wasn't like a big open field or a space that didn't have a lot of tree cover.
You know what it reminded me of is if you remember the old In Search Of series with Leonard Nimoy hosting, the Alan Landsberg production. They did an episode on UFOs. I think it was their first episode on UFOs. And there was a landing in Medford, Minnesota. There was a landing case that they talked about somewhere else. I can't remember the exact location, but an object had landed, and this farming family had seen it. And then all of a sudden it took off, and they interviewed all the witnesses. And it sounds very much like that type of case. And of course, they went through the same thing that Dan Gordon went through. When the police came to investigate, they started talking about, don't use our name. Don't tell us about this. Just forget about it. That type of thing.
Yeah.
And, so that stigma was very prevalent in the 70s. But I remember that case being exposed on In Search Of years ago. And it reminds me a lot of the La Cabana landing.
Yeah. So why do you think it landed there? Have you got any reason behind it?
No idea. But I'll give you an even more perplexing mystery. In 76, when we had the A-Bear Road outbreak and the UFO phenomenon stuff, we had a UFO landing in town, on the avenues in town. Now, the avenues are surrounded by houses
Yeah.
everywhere, and yet something landed. This woman called the police, which Bob Martell was the dispatcher on duty that evening. And back then, you used to have a dispatcher at the police station. Now everything goes through like county, but
Yeah.
it was a great job. You know, you handled a few calls at night, and you know, and so forth. And he got the call, and so since they were only a street and a half away, they just jumped in the cruiser and went over. And Bob Martell told me when he got there, the woman said it just took off. It had landed over here, and she was pointing to it. And there was this matted down area of circular area of grass that had been matted down and crushed. And Bob Martell said he went over and he reached down with his hand, and he could still feel the heat coming off of it where something had landed. So that happened in 76 as well. And this is the perplexing part. It lands literally in somebody's yard in this very urban area in the avenues. If it had landed across the road on the other side, it's completely woods and nobody would have ever seen it. So it's almost as if it was intentionally doing that. It didn't make any sense. You want to stay secret or not seen. It could have landed over on the other side. No one would have ever seen it.
So it's kind of like I'm getting from this that it's telling you without telling you, showing you the truth without actually showing you the truth, I suppose.
Yeah, it's perplexing, and
yeah,
but it's completely real at the same time. And unfortunately, back in the 70s, that stigma really stayed with everybody. And we had so many people that were law enforcement officials, don't use my name, rangers, things like that. And now they're coming full circle because we have a better understanding of this phenomena. There's more respect for it. You got Air Force, Pentagon, so forth, all these different, Skinwalker Ranch and so forth. And now my hometown actually has a festival that they have dedicated to Bigfoot. It's been going on for about 10 years now. And it's a funny little story because there was a guy named, remember his name. He had read about a story in a magazine about a mosquito calling contest in this town. And he thought, we've got the Bigfoot phenomena here. Why can't we have a Bigfoot calling contest? Well, it's a great idea. So he set it up, and, a few hundred people the first time, and it went on and on. Dave Molinar was his name. And so we just kept growing and growing. And now we have between, 5,000 people that show up every year.
Wow.
So we have this nice festival, but what it is a positive. So for people that have had sightings, they can be open about it. There's no having to keep this as a dark secret. And it's really an interesting way that we've come full circle. And I think part of that was the legislation that I passed back in the 2003, 2004, calling Whitehall protective ordinance for these creatures. And that was passed by both the village and the town. And when I wrote it up, it was to recognize the history, going back to those Native American times and so forth. And so it allowed a lot of credibility, documentation. It was part of our hidden history, and that recognized that. And it was actually in honor of Professor Cook, who I'd studied under. And back in the 1980s, Dr. Cook had tried to get these creatures put on the endangered species list. He actually attempted it. And so we were able to actually get legislation passed in Whitehall in honor of Dr. Cook. So, it's really come full circle now from a negative to a positive. And that's nice to see.
Yeah.
It's awesome. You have the Bigfoot calling contest too, right?
Yes, that is it. Yeah. We have it the last Saturday of September every year. And people like Barbara Spohr and various people in town and stuff have brought this to a new level. And we have speakers that come forward. I've given a talk at every festival so far, and there's other speakers like Steve Culls and so many different others, and they talk about the modern Bigfoot phenomenon. Then at 5 o'clock, everybody gathers in the amphitheater, and they all give their favorite Bigfoot call, and so it's a contest, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Sounds like it. When is it this year?
September, the last Saturday in September every year.
Yeah, I think they should do it outside at night and see if they get any calls back.
Well,
Yes.
That'd be more fun.
We do it outside.
Yeah.
At 5 o'clock, though.
Right.
Yeah.
Should try it a little bit later and just see if you get any recalls.
Yeah, it's interesting because everybody has their, it's a lot of fun, and everybody has their own version of their yell. Some people are clicking sticks together. Some people, it's a long, and probably the most famous vocal report was that of, Alan Berry and Ron Moorhead, when they had recorded this creature sound in the Sierras. And so that was a pretty big case back in the 1970s. I think it was 72. And those vocalizations are still pretty compelling. And there's a whole host of different sounds with those vocalizations, from almost like monkey-like chirping to angry displays to a whole range that were recorded. So everybody's got their own little version of that. And I think, I really have a lot of respect for Ron Moorhead, and some of his research is getting pretty interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. We've got quite a few questions for you, Paul. So are we all right to jump on them now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So this next one's from Nickname as well. She's asking, what is the effect of Congress in the US coming from the UK? Is it limited to what we know? And in general, is there zero Congress?
Well, the congressional hearings, a lot of the answers and that were given were something to the effect of, I'll have to talk to you in closed doors about that. So there were private hearings as well.
Yeah.
And so they can only go so far. There's all sorts of national security issues and things. But obviously whatever the mystery going on here is, it is the holy grail of the governments around the world. And I think the idea to discredit this phenomena is a thing of the past now. And, the whole idea that they're taking this serious, I think, is very important. And I think it shows, whoever learns, it's not what this phenomena is, it's how you can duplicate the technology. And whoever learns to duplicate that technology first is going to have a leg up on the world.
So do you think we're being shown how, not so much how the technology works, but kind of getting a bit of an insight, and it's like, right, this is it. This is what it does. Now you need to, like you just said, duplicate it or recreate it.
Well, I don't know if we'll ever be able to duplicate it. If let's say if we went back to caveman times and they found a cell phone, it's not going to do them a lot of good.
No,
because they would be able to understand it. And if we do have some sort of devices that have been back engineered, I'm not sure how far we can really go with that. But it does show that if we can duplicate that technology, that can make, let's say, the Nimitz carrier group rather obsolete.
Yeah,
that's pretty interesting. And that's definitely national security stuff. So I think that's the end goal here. I don't know if the phenomena is presenting itself. Over the years, the phenomena seems to change. It seems to evolve and morph and things. And really not sure where that's heading. But just the fact that we have a better respect for it is such a positive time. I could not have imagined that we'd be where we're at now, because from the Air Force study ending in the 60s onto, the 2000s and stuff, we really didn't evolve that much. We kind of knew there were documents, and we got some of the FOIA documents, freedoms of information documents and things, but we really didn't evolve that much. And then from 2017 to now, we've just been like, it's been a race. It's been hard to keep up. So yeah, we're going in the right direction. There's more credibility now. I have skeptical friends that'll always say, well, the bottom line will be, well, show me the proof. Well, Dr. David Jacobs said something that I always remembered. He said, the evidence for UFO reality isn't subtle. He said, it's like a hammer hitting you over the head. And when you actually give it a fair play and you actually talk about the credible cases and research the credible cases, it's very compelling.
Yeah. Do you think that we could be creating the phenomena ourselves, and that it's not this big mystical energy that's going on? It's actually us as humans as a collective that are causing the paranormal phenomena, supernatural to happen. I know not everything it wouldn't cover everything, but the majority of it.
Yeah, I think you're hitting on something very important there. If we look into the research of let's say the UFO phenomena in general, people like Jacques Vallée have done that. They've gone back, centuries, and they document UFO phenomena. So it's part of us. It's not. Yeah. It's not like in 1947 it started. That's a bunk. You can go back to centuries ago, and you'll find them in paintings and all sorts of histories. So the UFO phenomena has been part of us. And if you talk about things like, let's say poltergeist phenomena, which I'm pretty confident that poltergeist phenomena is a real phenomena, and that can be traced back to Roman times and Greek times with the pounding sounds, the knockings and the footsteps and the objects being tossed around and so forth. Your famous Enfield case, and so forth. So, I'm pretty confident about that, and it's part of us. These are common human experiences that, for some reason, we kind of, as we got older, we would get away from them. In actuality, many of the children and things that have experienced this, they haven't been taught that this isn't real, and so they understand it better. Some of those cases of reincarnation stuff are pretty fascinating.
Yeah, but as well, sorry, just a quick add on to that. Is that okay? I know someone mentioned it the other week, and since then it has been playing on my mind a lot with the connection in the phenomena. But the split experiment, if it's not being observed, it doesn't do anything, and when it is being observed, then it's creating. So that being said, if it's being observed, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, then it's being created, and then that then goes back to manifestation, which then in turn can become to intent, depending on how you are thinking, whether it's negative or positive. So I believe there's a big connection with all of that. The more I think about it, you don't get any more answers. It just goes deeper and deeper. But it does. But all that is, for me, all that's starting to connect, like intent, manifestation, split experiment, consciousness, observation. It makes so much more sense now than I didn't even know anything about it this time 10 years ago.
Yeah, I agree. I think we are sort of in uncharted areas right now, but it's an evolution of this study, and I've been fortunate that I haven't had the preconceived notions, and I've allowed this to bring me to where I'm at now, to see these connections between the different phenomena. And Jacques Vallée has done this, and other researchers as well. So I think yeah, I think you're touching on some very interesting points. And the simple, I mean, if you really boil it down, these are common human experiences. And I just find them fascinating. And I think we need to just keep documenting and see where this all goes. I'm excited because, you know, things were kind of, they have moved so fast in the past 10 years that I wonder what the next, 5 years will bring. And we have, I think things are much more open now. Certainly when I was growing up, if there was a show like this or a radio show on the unexplained, it was the exception. It was kind of rare. And so I would record everything I could with a tape recorder and stuff. Nowadays, it's, you can go to almost any network on television and there's a paranormal show. I think the Weather Channel even has a paranormal show. So, I mean, we've evolved in that sense already. There's a much more of a recognition of this phenomenon now.
Well, yeah, you saying that just quickly. We've got cable like Virgin. And you scroll down and you can go to the 24-hour channels and you've got paranormal, supernatural. You just click on it and you just watch it for the rest of your life. You don't ever have to turn the TV off ever again. It's got everything on there. So everything that's ever been on, new series, old series, stuff from 70s, 80s around the world. It's great.
I agree.
So you were talking about, this phenomena being old, and it's documented in photos or in pictures and paintings and stories. We have a question from Nickname. What do you think about underneath the pyramids, talking about history?
I don't have any insight into that. I don't know any of the researchers over there. I know, Zahi Hawass used to be the director of antiquities, and he actually does tours over there now. I've read the reports, but I have no insight as to how real or how legitimate they are. But yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Wouldn't it be fascinating if there are some underground archives there? Because that's always been, I remember that was one of Edgar Casey's predictions years ago. So I'm open to it. I don't have any inside knowledge though of it.
Yeah. So I'm just going to do this question. Well, it's more of a statement than a question from Nickname. It's kind of in relation to what we're talking about. Well, everything is, but this more so. It's perplexing to know that these topics that don't exist, yet you can study them at degree level, including folklore, cryptozoology, etc. I think there's a university in the UK where you can study the paranormal.
Paranormal and parapsychology,
Yeah. And none of this exists.
Years ago, I took a course from right up here in Adirondack Community College here in Glens Falls, Queensbury area, New York. And that was by Helen Fitzgerald, who's passed on now. But she had done, she was a parapsychologist. And she had taught a 6 or 8 week course. And it really exposed my eyes to a lot of the parapsychological studies that were going on at the time. And so, I've been open to this. And, for the skeptic who says, there's nothing to it, I think it's a win-win. Because I'll tell you, if there is nothing to cryptozoology, if there's nothing to poltergeist phenomena, if there's nothing to the UFO phenomenon, then why are we seeing it? Then why is it part of our existence, our human experience? So from a social anthropological point of view, I think it's important for the skeptic to study this as well. So I think it's a win-win. And I have skeptical friends and we can have debates and things and just keep everything open and honest and that's fine. So I really do think this is a win-win for everybody.
I think to be a skeptic, you have to have some level of understanding of what you're trying to debunk or explain away, because if you don't, your skepticism is just naysaying at that point. You're not really proving anything.
Well, sometimes the skeptics seem more religious than the believer because they're like exposing at any cost. And so I can see that sort of contradiction. But I'm open to it. We just lost one of the main skeptics, Joe Nickel, not long ago. And I met Joe, and we had opinions, but we were always very, when I met him, we were very cordial with each other. And I respect Joe. And it's sad to see him pass on. He had written some books with my brother and stuff. So, I think there's a place for everybody, the skeptic, the believer, the researcher. I think you just have to maintain that objectivity and allow this phenomena to bring you where it's going to bring you.
Yep. Yeah. And though with skepticism, so a lot of people say you have to be open to it. I don't fully believe that, because I know a few people that are or have been skeptics, and then something they've just been doing the normal day-to-day stuff. Something's happened and it's completely changed the train of thought as to what's actually going on.
Interesting. Certainly, obviously, people could influence. When you're on like a ghost investigation. Some people are more susceptible, some aren't. So it's interesting. But like I said, you kind of got to go where the phenomena takes you.
Yeah.
You can't lose your objectivity. I've had a lot of friends who have, when they would investigate something, they kind of know where it's going when they go into the investigation. And you got to get away from that. You got to allow that to, unfold as it happens. And, you can be aware that there may be these characteristics pop up and things, but, we're always learning. We're always documenting. And I think that's the goal we've got here.
Yeah. Just to let you know, Nicole's had to go. She's got a really bad migraine, so she's struggling. So focus isn't too well, and she's feeling a bit sick. So she sends her apology, and
that's fine.
Yeah. So just to let everyone know that she's not just been abducted, or at least I don't think she has. But no, it's like you're saying. A lot of people say you need to be open to accept it. I get where they're coming from with that, but then you've got the flip side of the coin where people are open to it and they don't get anything happen to them. They've never experienced anything.
I have for many years I did not experience anything. And over the 50 years, I may have experienced a poltergeist incident, and I may have experienced things of that nature, but overall I have not had one of those apparition experiences. I have not had a major UFO experience. I have not had a sighting of a Bigfoot type creature, but I have there's no doubt in my mind that people are experiencing this real phenomena. I just don't know what it is. But I've been sort of, I haven't had any great experiences myself, even though it's been 50 years of researching.
Yeah. No, I get that. See, I've had quite a few, and it kind of comes in clumps. So you get a few together, then nothing for ages, and there's a few bits in between that could be something, could be absolutely nothing. And then you get one major one, it's like, wow. So, and you know what I mean? So I've always been part of it. It's all from being as far back as I can remember. I've always had stuff going on, and for me, it's always been normal. It's just been normal life. I've never thought that does this happen to anyone else? That or is it just me it's happening to? Things happen like when I was a kid in that, and I never spoke to the parents about it. I've only got one brother, didn't speak to your brother, none of my friends, and I just thought it's just whatever's happening is happening. I don't need to. I never felt the need to have to mention it to anybody.
Right.
But I can't. I can't
you're-
tell you why. It's just that's what it was.
Well, you're susceptible to these phenomena. Now, people can live in a haunted house or allegedly haunted house and have nothing happen to them. And then
Yep.
another person can live in that same house and have all sorts of things happen. Also, there doesn't have to be a history to these types of poltergeist outbreaks. I remember there was a case, I believe it was North Carolina, back in the 70s and 80s, when the guy's house was just ransacked and they just could not explain it. And yet there was no history to the house. It was a brand new house and so forth. So yeah, poltergeist phenomena can be very perplexing. It isn't always ghost related. So shall we say no history there. It seems to be a definite energy that takes place.
Yeah.
But yeah, you may very well be more susceptible to these types of phenomena. And obviously, many researchers, respectable researchers, whether Barry Taff or Terry Gaynor, very respectable parapsychologists, they also may use a psychic or someone who's sensitive to help pick up information. So yeah, it's a tool, and yeah, you very well may just be more sensitive.
Yeah, because I was thinking, is it like you just said, the person, or is it just being, suppose, in the right place at the right time, and that phenomena is happening there? You just happen to be there while it's going on.
Yeah, I agree. You just never know, and the thing with the Bigfoot phenomena is it's like hitting the lottery. You could be taking a ride like Dan Gordon did one night at 4:30 in the morning and have this great sighting.
Yeah.
And other people can go in and camp out and look for things and not come up with anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, you just have to be lucky. Try to increase your chances by going to areas that there's multiple sightings, and then maybe hanging out at times when most of the sightings have taken place. That's part of this documentation phenomena, where you want to document, particularly in a haunting, you want to document when this phenomena seems to happen. And what you will see, at least we found it with the research we've done, certain times of the night, certain times that the stuff seems to build up and happen. And there's certain times when it's flat, when nothing happens. And once you establish those patterns, you've got a better area to study.
Yep. Totally get that. Because he's like these places around here, where I drive to and from work, or just local areas where I've had things happen. But then I've been up and down that road hundreds of times and there's been nothing. So was it just like the off chance that I was there at the correct moment for me to witness it? Or was it me that was drawing that energy? So that's why it happened. That's why it is loads of different questions and answers, isn't there?
Well, these common human experiences that are kind of unexplainable, they're very real to people that experience them, but you can't bring them into a laboratory and actually study them. So I've had experiences where I've known certain things might happen, be the precognitive dream or something like that. And I know, something would happen, but I can't measure that or put it in a laboratory. And it may not be 100%. So when you're dealing with psychics, the skeptic will always have the upper hand because he's going to demand 1,000%, 100% accuracy.
Yeah.
And reality is, if you're a star baseball player, you hit that ball 3 times out of 10, then you're making millions of dollars. You're batting 300 and you're a great hitter. But the reality is, if a psychic does that and does 3 out of 10 predictions, then the skeptic would argue, see, he was wrong 7% or 7 times. So that's always been the skeptical argument. And the reality is, this is a human experience, so you probably would never have 100% accuracy of anything.
Well, no, but that's like anything, though, isn't it?
Yeah, Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. Right, we've got some more questions for you. Next one's from Sober Carper, and he's asking, "Hi Paul, do you follow the notion that a lot of researchers do nowadays that all of the unknown phenomena, i.e. UFO, cryptid, supernatural, all come from one source?"
Yeah, I'm open to everything, but
Yeah.
the reality is that over 50 years now, I would not be surprised if these are all common manifestations from the same source phenomena. And the reality is, we may or may not ever find that source. Maybe it's unfindable. Maybe it's just,
Yeah.
but over the 50 years, I've had a lot of fun and a lot of great times doing this. Met a lot of great people like yourself and so forth, that I really appreciate. And Dr. Cook and Dr. Hynek and so forth. So yeah, this is for me. It's a no-brainer. These are interesting studies. It's a fascinating phenomena to follow, but we may never actually get to that source, that actual source. But I do think that it's a real possibility that these different phenomena are different manifestations from that source.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. Next question is from Nickname. So this, we're going to dive off this subject. We'll end up coming back onto it anyway. But her question is, are there any newer cases of the fresh snow nightwalkers, or was it a wave that you know of?
I don't have any knowledge of those. No.
So they're the ones, they look like walking teeth. Is over in California back in, I think it was the late 90s, early 2000s. The fresh, is it fresh snow in California? I'm sure it is. Yeah, fresh snow nightwalkers. Or night crawlers, sorry. Nightwalkers, night crawlers. I can never remember.
Yeah, I don't know. I simply don't know.
No, fair enough.
Of recent time, there's been a lot of talk of dogman type reports.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is, in my research, I've never come across dogman reports, but I'm open to them from the research of various researchers that have described them. But over here in my neck of the woods, I get reports of the Bigfoot phenomena pretty readily, and it's typical. It doesn't fit the dogman report. So yeah, I'm open to this phenomena. I'm just not getting a lot of reports of dogman in this area.
Right. No, thank you for that. Because I do want to talk to you about dogman, but there's a couple more questions first, if that's okay.
Sure.
So this one's from Kate Hane the Hawthorne. She's asking, what, if any, are the boundaries between cryptids, aliens, supernatural non-humans, and does a definition matter?
Well, there appear to be common denominators. If you look at the ghost phenomena, the poltergeist phenomena, and so forth, and the UFO phenomena, they both, sometimes appear in lights. They both disappear, sometimes as if you're turning off a light. I remember that was one of the descriptions of a trooper in a sighting that took place in the Northeast here. He said it was as if somebody reached up and turned off a light. So they have this appearance, this disappearance phenomena, and they seem to be very, very similar. A lot of common denominators between all the different phenomena.
Yeah. So what, out of all the reports, what in your eyes is the most common? Can you give us a thing on that?
Regarding any of these phenomena?
Yeah, just pick anything.
Yeah, I think they're all pretty common. They're all pretty well documented. Certainly the poltergeist phenomena, you can go back thousands of years, and that is I think that's fairly well documented. The UFO phenomena, extremely well documented with the, particularly when you have naval footage now being released of objects they don't know what they are.
Yeah.
Bigfoot phenomena, extremely well documented, going back, thousands of years in Chinese records, but on a global perspective. So with all these phenomena, you can go globally and have the same thing. For instance, with the Bigfoot phenomena, it might be called Bigfoot over here, or the Falk monster, or Momo in Missouri. You go up into Canada, the Sasquatch, or various Native American names, a whole host of Native American names. If you go to the Himalayas, it's the abominable snowman, or
Yeah.
if you go to Australia, it's the Yowie, or the Yahoo, or the Devil's Devil.
Yeah.
So these are, the former Soviet Union, it was the Chichuna or the Almisti. So we have this global phenomena that's been well documented with the Bigfoot phenomena, the UFO phenomena as well, the poltergeist, parapsychology, so forth. I think they're all equally fascinating, and they're all equally well documented. And, isn't it interesting that we had remote viewers for 20 years that were, using parapsychological and technical remote viewing and so forth to try to bring details out, and that was government sponsored. So yeah, that's all these are pretty well documented, I'd say.
Yeah, because I remember, I don't know if it was you or somebody else, they were saying like they did a breakdown of what, like, I'll talk about UFOs in different counties across America, different days and different times, and I think the hit hotspot at the top of the list was, say, on a Wednesday at 8 p.m. in West Virginia. There's more UFOs spotted there compared to everywhere else. And there's just like certain pockets like that of days, times, and locations that seem to be higher than other places at them times.
That's interesting. I do know of the flaps that happen.
Yeah.
And I mean, in New York State, you can go down to Westchester County in the 1980s, and there were over 5,000 sightings that were documented. That was actually the last book by Dr. Hynek with Phil Imbrogno and Bob Pratt. Night Siege was the name of the book. And that documented the 1980s, mid 1980s UFO flap that took place there. So yeah, we have these flaps that occur. And sometimes they disappear, they stop as quickly as they start, the 73 flap and so forth. But, sometimes it might be media generated, and there's just a high concentration on certain areas. But yeah, we do have flaps that have been pretty well documented. In the 1950s, there was a flap of sightings that, and UFOs are actually seen going over Washington, D.C. So yeah, it's this is an interesting phenomenon. All these phenomena are fascinating, and that would be that's part of my document, and let the chips fall where they may. So that I find that very interesting that you said there's a certain time and a certain place. That's I think that's encouraging.
I just can't remember. Sorry, I just can't remember the person who it was that told me. So I do apologize.
Well, I know there was a documentary recently. I think it was a Tear in the Sky or something like that was the name of it.
Yeah.
And they had talked about actually going after UAP phenomena. In other words, not waiting for it to appear or document, but actually trying to find it, going with a lot of, and I think that's that's pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah. But as well, I know you mentioned 1973 quite a lot, and I know a lot of researchers do. Why do you think 1973 had such a big impact on the phenomena? And I'm going to say it. It's also the year I was born, so that might have something to do with it. No, but it's like there just seems to be a lot globally of all these different things going on during like 1973.
For some reason, the 73 flap seemed very credible. And there were those high credibility cases like, and Calvin Parker and Charles Hickson, they're both gone now, but they took quite a lot of flack for their sighting, but they never backed off of it.
No.
And Calvin Parker actually came forward talking about his experience more and more. I think it was Phil Mantle had written and worked with him quite a bit on getting the details out before he passed away. And
Yeah.
I believe both of those people. I believe the Captain Coyne in the helicopter. I don't think there's any question about these people's authenticity, their sincerity, that something happened to them. And
Yeah.
I don't know why it happened in 73, but Travis Walton was 1976. And, so we have some of these sightings taking place every year, really, but there do to be these flap areas. I'll give you an example. In 1974, a year after the 73 flap, there was a major UFO case right here in the Albany area, in Albany, New York, where UFO was traveled on their radar of the airport, Albany International Airport. And they were able to test it to make sure it wasn't temperature inversions or things like that. And so this became a highly credible case. And there were massive number of people that had gathered at the radio station in Glens Falls. And there were so many people that they had to move them down to a place called East Field, which was this ball field, and to get them out of the road because they were watching UFOs as they were flying around West Mountain. And so these types of incidents are very credible. And yeah, I don't know why there's certain flaps that seem more prevalent than others, but there does seem to be just a consistent flow of credible sightings. And certainly people like Dr. Hynek and so forth have brought credibility. Dr. Valet brought credibility to these sightings. And I find that interesting. For some reason, 73 might have been big for me because I was only 9 years old. And it might have been that first thing that really impacted me. And so, 73, that may have been simply the reason why, because had I been, a little older, let's say I was 10 in 1966, I might have been influenced by the Michigan UFO flap.
Right.
So, I think 73 for me was probably because I was about 9 years old and it had a real impact on me.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. Got one more question for you because we are coming up to the 90 minutes. Got about 10 minutes left. So this is from Gerald, Midwest Night Watchers, and he wants to know, I've never heard of this before. I guess he's being serious, but it doesn't sound like a serious question. What do you think of the Tuscumbia space penguins in 1967?
I don't know.
I've never even heard of that.
I haven't either. There are a whole host of hominid encounters that have taken place. We kind of boil it down into the communion type of being, being 4 feet tall, the Betty and Barney Hill case type of thing. But there's a whole host of beings that have been cited and reported over the years. So, I don't personally know about that case.
No, I've never heard of it before, so I couldn't even help. If Gerald's still in the chat, if he can put any information up, that'd be great. But so I want to ask you a question now on a sighting that I had recently. So I thought I'd seen a hot air balloon first on the Monday, then the next day on the Tuesday, both in the same part of the UK, same county, but one side, one the other. That looked like a hot air balloon, but when you zoom in and look at it, because I did get the photos and that, but while I was there, you could clearly see there's no basket on it. And when you watch the video, you can see it rotating. And the first one looks like an upside down pyramid. And it was there for like a couple of minutes. Then the one the next day, so I'm traveling down the highway, I'm doing 65 miles an hour. And this hot air balloon kept up with me for 18 miles. It stayed on my right-hand side all the way down behind the tree. It didn't get any closer, but it did expand and got bigger, but it was still in the same position, probably about half a mile away. Now, I've now managed to debunk that neither of them were hot air balloons, not just through the photos of the videos, because on Tuesday this week, I was driving down the same road, the A14, going into Cambridgeshire, and it was an actual hot air balloon. You could see the basket on it, you could see the 3 people inside it. I actually drove underneath it, and I worked out how long it took. So as soon as I seen it, it's like everything clicked into place to calculate it all. It took me less than 40 seconds to reach it, and it was roughly about a mile away. And within 2 minutes of me passing it, I could no longer see it in my mirrors. Now, if that was traveling alongside me, going in the same direction, it would not have been able to keep up with me, especially not for 18 miles and expand in size and get smaller. Plus, on the other 2, you could clearly see there was no basket on the bottom of these things, and there was just, like I said, there was in the sky. One was for over 20 minutes, the other one was only like 2-3 minutes.
Yeah,
but it's just, at first glance, these objects in the sky look like hot air balloons. So to someone like you're saying who's not observing this kind of stuff, you just think, oh, it's a hot air balloon, and carry on with the day. But it's only because I noticed if something didn't fit that I took the photos of him.
right.
So
Right. Interesting. One thing comes to mind right away is the triangular shape is pretty prevalent, and that's all been a characteristic over the years. And so, yeah, that's you got, what you did is your due diligence, and I think that has to be,
that's the shape of both of them. So this one is the first one, and that's the one the next day. So they have been filtered a little bit, but you can clearly see they're not hot air balloons.
Mm-hmm.
There's no the shape to them or anything.
Very interesting.
Then,
when was the date on that about?
Say that again, sorry.
When about was that the date?
The date was the 3rd of March, and the first one was 9 minutes past 9 a.m. and then the second one. So I'm just getting the pictures up now. That was the following day at 8:16 a.m.
Interesting. You're doing exactly the right thing. You're documenting the phenomena, as many details as possible, and you might have a detail or 2 there that might be important later on. So yeah, that's that's the way to do it, I think.
Yeah, but it's like I have been asking for proof of this phenomenon that it exists, and then this happened, and then on the second day I'm like, oh, there's an air balloon again. And it's like, it's actually not a hot air balloon. And then I've not uploaded them onto the computer yet because I don't want anything to happen, if that makes sense. But this is the general shape of the first one. Yeah, it was rotating. I think it was anti-clockwise. And then the one on the second day was rotating clockwise.
Interesting.
So, and it just seemed that nobody else had noticed them, or if they did, they just carried on doing what they was doing. But for it to stay level with me at 65 miles an hour for like nearly 20 miles is a phenomenon on its own, I think.
Yeah, and by putting it out there, you're allowing someone who may have had a similar experience to recognize that and come forward as well. So, yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah. So quickly, so Gerald's put details up of what happened with the penguins. Is actually a UFO alien report. A mushroom-shaped UFO landed in a farmer's field and had little aliens scampering around that look similar to penguins.
Yeah, there's a whole host of alien, or I don't like using that term, but of beings that are sighted. Sometimes they're tall, sometimes they're short. For instance, the Pascagoula 73 case was robot-like. Yeah, there's a whole host of of different types of beings, even though we kind of boil it down into that Betty and Barney Hill type of 4 foot tall, childlike being. But yeah, there's a lot of different cases.
Yeah, because I know Albert Rosales, he documents quite a lot of all these different types of humanoids, like the location, who was seeing them, and he same sort of thing. He gets as much information about it as he can, and he does put a lot up on Facebook. He's got his own Facebook group, humanoids and something else. I can't remember the full name of it. And then he's got all these books out as well. So yeah, there's just thousands of sightings and witnesses, and this is one of the weirdest things for me. Is like, it's very rare you get 2 identical witness accounts.
Yeah,
I don't mean from 2 people at the same place at the same time, but it's like each different encounter that I've had, other than the 2 look like hot air balloons, even though they still look different. They weren't identical. There's never, or very rarely, these 2 that are the same, whether it's a non-human or some sort of craft.
interesting. Yeah.
So I don't know what's going on. But so, last question for you. So we ask this all the guests. So the question we ask is, if you got the choice to know everything that goes on with the phenomena, why it happens, how it works, what the connections are, would you want to know?
Obviously, doing this for a half century, yeah, I'd like to get some answers, and I think we're still evolving. I wish people like Dr. Hynek were able to see what's going on today, and Stan Friedman and things they've all away. But the reality is that this phenomena may be far more complicated and more complex and more layered, and that maybe I'll never get the full answers. But yeah, if I had a chance, yeah, I'd like to know as much as I could about it. Far-reaching implications. But the reality is, I've had a lot of fun researching this as well. I've had a great time. I've met great people, and I have no regrets about it.
No, thank you for your answer. So Nicole is on the same boat as you. She'd like to know everything. I kind of wouldn't, because I like the mystery, the not knowing, the trying to find out, like the solving puzzles sort of thing. I enjoy that side to it. So I think just because of that, I don't really want to know. I want to carry on doing this. But then again, like you just said, it would be nice to get some answers. If you've been doing it for as long as you have, then you'd want something out of it in the end, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think to a certain extent I've had some conclusions, or some, well, not conclusions, but some interesting paths and rabbit holes been down. But I continue to do research at the Skeen Manor. There's a woman runs the Skeensboro Paranormal Group, Kim Marie, and we do paranormal investigations there. There's a lot of different investigations there, and so yeah, I'm open to experiencing this anytime, and I just want to, I'd like to just continue with this. I think and this is not going to be obviously hasn't been a passing interest or things, but it'll probably be something I do until I pass away.
Yep, like most researchers, just keep going and going until you literally can't go anymore.
Yeah, I think Cliff Barackman said, "Yeah, I'm a lifer."
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, Paul, so much again for coming on. It's an absolute pleasure as always.
Oh, it was great chatting with you, and I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, no, so thank you, everyone in the chat. Thank you for your questions. Nicole sends her apologies, but she had to go. She just it was getting too bad. It's like the lights and sound and everything. So she's sorry about that. I will be doing another update on Friday about something that's coming up at Easter. That's all I can tell you right now. So I'll tell you a little bit more on Friday. This is going to be going out on Podcast Player, so Podbean, Spotify, Audible, and Apple Podcasts, so you can listen back on there. And I just want to say thank you again, Paul. It's great having you on, and hopefully you come on again soon.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure chatting with you.
Yeah. So thanks everyone. We'll be back on Friday. We've got Trey Hudson coming on, who's part of the Skinwalker Ranch. He's going to be coming on talking about some of that, amongst other stuff. Hopefully Nicole's going to be better. And then a week on Friday is going to be our last Friday, where we've got Heidi Pop coming on. And then that's a Good Friday one. And then after that, Fridays are going to go out to we're only going to do specials on a Friday, but they're only going to go to YouTube members and Patreon members. So to give something back to those that help support the channel. So that's everything. So I just want to say again, thank you, Paul. Thank you, everybody else. And we'll see you Friday at 8:30. So that's it. Is there anything you want to add just before we go?
No, if anybody needs to contact me, I'm right on Facebook, or they can get me bfyeti1@yahoo.com.
Perfect. Right. I'll put that in the chat, in the note descriptions on the channel. So if they need to contact you, you can do it direct. Right. So that's it. I'm going to stop waffling. So see you all Friday. Take care. Goodbye.
Thanks for watching. See you next time.